Bill Murray has always been one of Hollywood's most unpredictable figures. Beloved for his dry humor, offbeat charm, and legendary performances, he built a career on doing things his own way, often ignoring the rules that govern fame. But now, Bill Murray is trending worldwide for reasons that go far beyond nostalgia or a new movie release. Fans, critics, and industry insiders are all asking the same question: what really happened this time? For years, Murray's reputation balanced between genius and mystery. Stories about his unusual behavior circulated quietly, treated as quirky footnotes to a legendary career. Yet suddenly, those long whispered stories have resurfaced all at once, sparking intense debate across social media. What was once brushed off as eccentricity is now being re-examined. Through a much more serious lens, the shock isn't just that Bill Murray is trending, it's why. Old interviews, behind-the-scenes accounts, and recent developments have collided in a way no one expected. Some fans feel betrayed. Others insist the truth has been misunderstood. And many are realizing that the image they grew up loving may have always been more complicated than it appeared. As the internet tries to piece together the full story, one thing is clear: this moment has forced a reckoning. Not just for Bill Murray, but for how Hollywood legends are remembered, protected, and questioned. What pushed this story into the global spotlight, and why is it happening right now? The reason Bill Murray suddenly began trending worldwide didn't come from a new film, a surprise appearance, or a viral joke. Instead, it stemmed from a wave of renewed attention on long-standing behind-the-scenes stories that many had previously ignored or minimized. As clips, interviews, and past accounts resurfaced online, the narrative surrounding Murray shifted almost overnight. What once seemed like harmless eccentricity began to look far more complicated when viewed collectively rather than in isolation. For decades, Murray's unpredictable behavior was framed as part of his charm. Stories circulated about him showing up unannounced, refusing scripts, or communicating only through a mysterious voicemail system. Fans laughed these moments off, seeing them as proof that Murray existed outside Hollywood's rigid system. But as more former collaborators began speaking openly, a different picture started to emerge, one that questioned whether unpredictability had crossed into something more troubling. Several resurfaced interviews revealed moments of on-set tension that had previously been dismissed. Co-workers described environments where discomfort was normalized, concerns were downplayed, and speaking up felt risky. While none of these stories were new individually, their sudden reappearance at the same time created a ripple effect. Viewers began connecting dots, asking why these accounts had been overlooked for so long and why they were only now gaining traction. Social media played a major role in amplifying the moment. Short clips and quotes spread rapidly, often without context, fueling intense debate. Some fans rushed to defend Murray, arguing that his behavior had been exaggerated or misunderstood. Others pointed out that patterns matter more than intent, and that repeated stories from different sources deserve serious consideration. The divide grew sharper by the hour, pushing the topic into global trending territory. What shocked many was not just the content of the allegations, but the timing. In an era where audiences are reevaluating the legacies of powerful figures, Murray's carefully maintained image suddenly felt vulnerable. People began questioning why accountability often arrives decades after behavior occurs, and why fame can shield individuals from scrutiny for so long. The conversation quickly expanded beyond Murray himself, becoming a broader discussion about Hollywood culture and the cost of silence. Industry insiders quietly acknowledged that Murray's reputation had always been complex. While praised for brilliance and originality, he was also known as someone studios approached with caution. Projects stalled, schedules shifted, and entire productions adjusted around his unpredictability. These realities were rarely discussed publicly, but many professionals recognized them instantly as the online conversation unfolded. As the story gained momentum, the shock came from realization rather than revelation. Fans weren't learning something entirely new, they were finally seeing everything at once. The cumulative weight of these accounts changed how people interpreted Murray's past, forcing a reassessment of where eccentric behavior ends and responsibility begins. This moment marked a turning point. Bill Murray trending worldwide wasn't about cancel culture or outrage alone, it was about reevaluation. A collective pause where audiences, critics, and industry veterans reconsidered what they had accepted for years. And as the conversation continued to grow, one question lingered above all others. If these stories had been there all along, why did it take this long for the world to truly listen? As the online conversation intensified, attention shifted from isolated stories to broader patterns. What unsettled many observers was not a single incident, but the consistency of accounts spanning decades. Former co-workers, directors, and supporting cast members had, at different times, hinted at similar experiences, difficult working conditions, emotional discomfort, and a sense that certain behavior was tolerated simply because of who Bill Murray was. When placed side by side, these stories no longer felt coincidental. One major factor fueling the renewed scrutiny was how the industry itself had historically responded. For years, Murray's behavior was quietly managed rather than confronted. Productions adapted schedules, intermediaries were used to communicate with him, and uncomfortable moments were reframed as just how he is. This behind-the-scenes accommodation, once considered a necessary trade-off for talent, is now being questioned openly. Audiences are asking whether enabling behavior, even passively, allowed problems to persist longer than they should have. Another shock came from how normalized silence had become. Several individuals later admitted they didn't speak up at the time because they feared professional consequences. Hollywood's power dynamics meant that challenging a well-established star could stall or end a career. As these realities resurfaced, the discussion expanded beyond Bill Murray to examine the systems that protect influential figures while discouraging accountability. The focus was no longer just on actions, but on the culture that allowed those actions to go unchallenged. Public reaction became deeply divided. Longtime fans struggled to reconcile the actor they admired with the growing criticism. Many pointed to Murray's contributions to cinema, his charitable acts, and moments of genuine kindness that others had shared. They argued that complexity should not be ignored, and that public discourse risks flattening people into one-dimensional villains. On the other side, critics emphasized that good deeds do not cancel out harm, intentional or not, and that admiration should not excuse discomfort caused to others. Media coverage amplified this tension. Headlines became sharper, commentary more polarized. Some outlets focused on Murray's legacy and influence, while others highlighted voices that had previously gone unheard. The speed at which opinions formed underscored how quickly public perception can shift when old narratives are re-examined through a modern lens. What once seemed quirky now felt questionable, and what once felt untouchable suddenly appeared fragile. Meanwhile, Murray himself remained largely silent, which only intensified speculation. In the absence of direct responses, interpretations filled the void. Supporters viewed his silence as restraint or reflection, while critics saw it as avoidance. This lack of clarity kept the story alive, pushing it across platforms and time zones, ensuring it stayed in global trending lists longer than anyone expected. At its core, this moment revealed something uncomfortable about celebrity culture. It exposed how charisma can blur boundaries, how success can soften scrutiny, and how long-standing reputations can delay difficult conversations. Bill Murray's worldwide trending status wasn't driven by outrage alone. It was fueled by recognition. Recognition that stories once whispered are now being heard loudly, and that public understanding evolves over time. As the dust continued to swirl, one thing became clear: this wasn't just a scandal cycle destined to fade quickly. It was part of a larger reckoning about accountability, memory, and the stories society chooses to believe. And with the conversation still unfolding, the most impactful consequences may not have surfaced yet. As the global conversation about Bill Murray unfolded, attention shifted toward the complexity of separating the man from the myth. Murray has long been celebrated as an icon of unpredictability, the actor who could disappear from a set for hours, show up at a random public event, or deliver a line in a way that defied convention. These quirks once contributed to his legendary status, reinforcing an image of a man completely untethered from rules and expectations. But in the current climate, those same stories were being reinterpreted. Behavior that previously seemed charming or harmless now raised serious questions about boundaries, consent, and professional responsibility. One of the most discussed aspects involved long-standing accounts from colleagues about tense or uncomfortable situations on set. People described moments where decisions, improvisations, or personal actions left others feeling disrespected or marginalized. While these stories had been shared quietly over the years, they had largely been dismissed as eccentricities of genius. Social media, however, gave them a louder platform, and once audiences were able to see the patterns, the perception began to shift dramatically. The charming troublemaker narrative began to feel incomplete, prompting debate about accountability and the real human cost of celebrity behavior. The renewed focus on Murray also highlighted how Hollywood has historically managed difficult personalities. Directors, producers, and crew often bent schedules, adjusted scenes, or tolerated discomfort in exchange for Murray's unparalleled talent. This tolerance, some now argue, created an environment where misbehavior could continue unchecked. By examining these patterns, audiences began to question whether admiration for a performer should ever excuse negative impacts on those around them. It also sparked broader discussions about the culture of privilege in the entertainment industry, and how long-standing norms have protected influential figures at the expense of transparency and fairness. Fans and critics alike wrestled with conflicting emotions. For decades, Murray's charisma, humor, and unique presence inspired devotion. His filmography includes classics that have shaped generations. At the same time, the resurfaced accounts forced a reconsideration of how celebrity and accountability intersect. It became clear that a full understanding of Murray's legacy required grappling with both brilliance and the human flaws that come with it. Some defended him, emphasizing that eccentricity and impulsiveness were integral to his genius. Others insisted that repeated patterns of questionable behavior could not be ignored. Regardless of talent or charm, the debate intensified as mainstream media picked up on the trend. Articles, think pieces, and social media threads dissected not only Murray's actions, but also the larger context of Hollywood culture. Many writers argued that the public fascination wasn't just about him personally, but about a broader reckoning with power, privilege, and accountability in the entertainment world. The global interest was amplified by the combination of nostalgia, celebrity fascination, and the current climate of heightened scrutiny for public figures. Ultimately, the story of Bill Murray trending worldwide revealed more than just curiosity about one individual. It illuminated the tension between adoration for legendary figures and the ethical responsibility of those who create, witness, or consume their work. For Murray, it's a moment that blends fame, scrutiny, and reflection, forcing audiences to confront a more nuanced reality. The image of the iconic, untouchable actor is now inseparable from the stories of those whose experiences remind us that charisma does not absolve responsibility. As the worldwide discussion continued, Bill Murray's situation became more than just a trending headline. It became a reflection on celebrity culture itself. What started as curiosity and shock transformed into a broader conversation about how society treats its icons. Audiences began examining not only Murray's behavior, but also the systems and environments that allowed patterns to persist over decades. Hollywood, fans, and industry veterans alike were forced to confront the tension between talent, fame, and responsibility. In the midst of the trend, one fact became increasingly clear. Bill Murray is a complex figure. He is capable of brilliance that has touched millions, yet his unpredictability and past actions cannot be ignored. Admirers of his work pointed out that his humor, creativity, and generosity have left an indelible mark on film and culture. Critics, meanwhile, emphasized that repeated stories of uncomfortable or disruptive behavior suggest that talent should not exempt anyone from accountability. This duality, brilliance alongside flaws, is what made the conversation so compelling and divisive worldwide. Murray himself remained largely silent during this period, a choice that fueled speculation. Silence allowed audiences to project interpretations, creating a perfect storm of curiosity, admiration, and criticism. Those who know him well suggest that his quiet approach is typical of his personality. He rarely engages publicly on matters that could stir controversy, preferring instead to focus on work and personal life. Yet, in the absence of explanation, the narrative took on a life of its own, spreading across social media, news outlets, and fan forums alike. The global attention also highlighted a cultural shift in how we view the actions of public figures. Stories that might have been dismissed or overlooked in the past are now subject to scrutiny, discussion, and reevaluation. What was once tolerated as eccentricity is increasingly examined for its impact on others. Bill Murray's trending moment became an example of how audiences and industry alike are re-evaluating what behavior is acceptable, even when it comes from someone celebrated and iconic. In the end, the reason Bill Murray trended worldwide was not a single revelation, but the accumulation of stories, reflections, and reconsiderations. Fans were reminded that celebrities, no matter how adored, are human, capable of brilliance, error, and complexity. His story sparked dialogue about accountability, admiration, and the complicated nature of fame, ensuring that the conversation was about far more than just one man. It became a lesson in understanding the full picture of legacy, celebrating talent while acknowledging the consequences of actions, and recognizing that even the most beloved figures exist within systems that shape behavior, protect reputations, and demand reflection. Bill Murray trending worldwide may shock some, delight others, and puzzle even more. But beyond the headlines lies a story about perception, responsibility, and the enduring tension between the myth and the man. In the end, this moment reminds us that fame and brilliance do not erase complexity, and that the world will always be fascinated by the layers behind an icon like Bill Murray.